When you think of the office of the CFO, customer service may not be the first team that comes to mind. It's often seen as a post-sale function focused on tickets and phone calls. The reality, in today's business environment, customer service is tightly connected to cash flow, dispute resolution, and customer retention, all things that CFOs care deeply about. That's why in this episode, we're digging into the unexpected but critical role customer service plays in the financial health of a company. I'm Scott Leahy, and this is Esker On Air. Joining me today is Nick Carpenter, Business Development Manager at Esker. Nick works directly with finance and customer service teams to help align people, processes, and technologies across departments. And today we're digging into how the voice of the customer belongs inside the finance office. So Nick, welcome to the show.
Great to be back, Scott. Thank you for having me. And topic near and dear to my heart. Excited to dig in.
So let's start at the top. Why is customer service a relevant part of the office of the CFO?
Great question. This term is so new. When I first heard it, I had to ask myself the same thing, right? And as we've shared this feedback with CFOs and customer service leaders in general, what we found is that the office of the CFO is really addressing all things that touch the general ledger. And customer service transactions have a huge impact on the general ledger. Think of things like orders, returns, credits and claims, warranty claims. All of those things end up residing in the general ledger. And you've got to do those things well. I literally just got off a call 30 minutes ago with a company that offshored customer service and order entry to a low-cost labor country, ultimately to minimize their cost to serve. And the CFO comes back to them and goes, guys, we've got $1 million a year in credits due to order entry errors that are preventable. And it's a major source of EBITDA leakage for us. We need to address this stat, right? So I think we're starting to see these processes really link with one another. The other thing is that customer service is the link for a lot of manufacturing companies in particular between source to pay and invoice to cash. Let me just give you an example. Customer service is touching supply chain and the source to pay side of the equation, because all those source to pay related processes are designed to get raw materials in the door, right? So that you can ultimately fulfill orders, right? So you think of things like supplier management, ensuring that you have accurate supplier confirmations coming in, directly impact customer service teams in if they're able to promise an order and meet a delivery date. You think of when it touches the invoice to cash team, right? Customer service is touching them for things like orders on credit hold, billing errors, credits, right? So customer service is truly that linkage between those two different cycles that we're seeing more and more of.
All right, so speaking of that link between customer service, supply chain, and finance, what would you say the impact is on working capital that you're seeing with this customer service transformation?
It's a good question. There's obvious research that's out there. I forget who published it, but they made the argument that in research that customer service teams that connect with finance functions experience stronger working capital performance and dispute resolution times. We actually, Esker co-published a study with TCU, Texas Christian University, and they did some research on companies that were investing in Esker transformation, among other tools, right? Esker may have just been one part of the overall strategy, but companies that were taking a strategic transformational look on all of the different areas that impact their general ledger. And what they found is that those companies that were looking holistically across sourcing, supply chain, customer service, and finance is that they had better supply chain resiliency. They weren't stocking out, missing ship dates on customers that led to a scramble in getting raw materials in the door, or customer dissatisfaction because they weren't able to get products on time. They also saw and found better working capital. CX improvements made it easier to collect cash, and these companies were also carrying less inventory. So they also had increased working capital into their business, and they also had lower costs, right? So they also looked at the SG&A performance of these organizations and found that through automation, these organizations were actually operating more lean, which had a direct impact on EBITDA. So I think that research just go to show that looking holistically and transforming all of the different areas that Esker can help support within order to cash and source to pay can have some direct impacts on the bottom line.
Where do things typically go wrong when customer service is not aligned with finance?
I think where people are going wrong or delays are showing or issues are showing up is really around delays and visibility, right? So I'm thinking of a company that we worked with that had a customer service team that had to interface with corporate shared services that was based overseas. And it automatically took 1 day to get a response for any inquiry that came in related to an order or an invoice. So customer experience is impacted due to those delays of back and forth between those different disparate teams. Cash collections can be impacted, right, when finance and customer service aren't aligned. We hear of a lot of companies making cash collections activities on invoices that were paid that directly have a negative impact on the overall customer experience and a customer willing to grow with your organization. We also see it within the claims process, right, where customer service is engaging with finance and supply chain teams to do the investigation on claims to determine the validity, and that can really create delays in getting those claims approved or validated or disputed, right? Just if they're going back and forth ping-ponging, they might actually be missing dispute windows and not able to ultimately dispute that claim. So I think in short, when we see the teams operate in silos, right, there's costs that show up through poor collection efforts, slow response times, and definitely the overall customer experience.
So those are the issues that one can face when those teams aren't aligned. Let's think about some of the best practices that we see out there. How can companies better align customer service with the rest of the larger finance organization?
One of the biggest things that we've seen is creating a customer 360 between customer service and finance and AR. I think we've heard that term a lot from CRMs, right, where they say, we want a customer 360 between sales and customer service. Esker provides a really nice glimpse into the order to cash cycle of a given customer between customer service and finance so that you have one single pane of glass to look at to see that customer's order to cash cycle with you so you can start to make decisions on how to service that customer. For example, what are the pending orders? What's the order history of this customer? Where are they at against their credit limit? Are there any open disputes, right? Being able to quickly look and see some visual indicators around all of these different KPIs it can have a huge impact in your effectiveness and how quickly you're able to serve that customer.
All right, so let's get a little bit more specific and let's shift to technology. So how does automation help connect the dots between customer service and finance?
I think customer service and finance, there can be friction engaging those different teams, right? And especially for customers, right? Oftentimes we see customer service be the entry point if they have an inquiry that engages finance. So one big thing that we've seen in removing friction between engaging those two different teams is using AI to automatically categorize incoming emails and route them to the right department. I was working on a project just last week where one of the top inquiries that they were getting was questions about a copy of an invoice and orders on credit hold. And by automatically getting those inquiries to the right team immediately and introducing that touch point within customer service, they were able to reduce the response time by 38%, which is huge when you're thinking about getting an order out the door. I think, generative AI is also playing a huge impact, right? Esker's embedded generative AI within all of our different applications for very specific use cases. And we're seeing that be a huge improvement for teams in reducing the handling time on answering questions like, what's my balance? Has my claim been approved, right? And using generative AI to manage those customer-facing communications, introducing professionalism, as well as gaining all of the efficiency with not having to draft, those types of emails.
So for any CFOs listening right now, we like to talk about, one major takeaway from any one podcast that we do. So what's the one thing that they should understand about customer service?
Looking holistically at the impacts that customer service can have on the metrics that you care about, right? I even think back to the presentation we had at Esker All Access this year, our user conference, and Jim Tincher made the argument that improvements in CX can have direct impacts on key financial KPIs. things like measuring order velocity, right? How often a customer orders, the ability for a customer to grow with you, right? So I would say, looking at things like customer experience, not as, oh, that's something someone in CX does, to improve a net promoter score, but saying really realistically, if we can improve our customer experience, what does that lead to in terms of bottom line improvements? Does it lead to increased revenue growth? Does it lead to reduced leakage in our bottom line for things like credits that we're having to issue? So I think looking holistically between the two is probably the number one thing that I would recommend.
Well, thank you so much, Nick, for coming on the show here today and helping us rethink that role of customer service when it comes to the office of the CFO.
Pleasure, Scott. Thanks for having me on. Great work as usual.
Yeah. Well, and it's clear that with the right structure and support, customer service teams can influence everything from, as you've said, dispute resolution to working capital, and that has the real financial value. So if you're curious about how Esker can help your customer service team, check out the links in the show notes for more information. And as always, to learn more about Esker, visit us at esker.com. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.